Hello, my name is Marina Leo. I'm a junior at Lebanon High School, and I'm very proud to welcome you all to the wonderful city of Lebanon, New Hampshire. Lebanon is a very unique city, filled with vibrant local color. We have a close-knit, supportive community. The aspect of Lebanon that is the most important to me is our strong sense of civic duty. People in the Upper Valley are engaged and active citizens, interested in local, regional, and national politics. Lebanon is ecstatic to welcome United States Senator Bernie Sanders and to be part of the political revolution. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, my name is Lauren Hadley, and I'm a senior at Lebanon High School. And today, yes, I have pushed the submit button on my Common App for college applications. Yeah. And I am thrilled. I am finally done with the long, painful process of applying to colleges. But I'm also scared. I'm scared about getting in, and I'm scared about being able to afford college. And that is why I'm here today. And I know each and every one of you guys has a certain issue that you are passionate about. And Bernie has a plan for you, whether it is about retirement, healthcare, the economy, or education. Bernie is there for you. I want to graduate college, and I want to graduate debt-free. And I know Bernie wants that for me. I am passionate about Bernie Sanders because he is passionate about me. And now I would like to introduce Nate Ruby, who is the field organizer. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much for coming out here. My name is Nate Ruby. I'm the field organizer for the Upper Valley, and I want to tell you why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. On Christmas Eve last year, my fiance and I became engaged. Thank you for your congratulations. And on that evening, we talked about where we wanted to live and that sort of thing, and we committed to starting our family in the United States. And we set about planning for the various things that come up when you're starting a new family, like should we rent or purchase a house? Should we start saving for a second car? And then we looked a little bit further down the line and what it would be like to raise a kid together. We found something a bit shocking. Now let me back up a little bit. Ruth is a British citizen, and I'm not advocating for all of you to get divorces and marry English people, and it may sound like that in 2 seconds. But under their national healthcare system, healthcare is a right for all and not just those who have money. It would be more affordable for us to take first-class flights back and forth and take a limo from the airport each time for a visit while she is pregnant to have that child in the UK than it would be for me to go to Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center down the road from where I live, and that's ridiculous. The solution, again, is not getting divorced and marrying English people. It's creating a single-payer, universal healthcare model in the United States, a solution the senator has supported for years. But Bernie Sanders can't just wave his arms around and create a new healthcare system. He can't stop climate change with his left hand while he ends racial discrimination with his right hand and with his chin raises the minimum wage. Look to your left. Seriously, do this. Look to your left and look to your right. We are the political revolution that is going to create a fair and just society. And though I don't doubt that Senator Sanders wouldn't try to knock on every door in the Upper Valley, and he cannot sit down and have a conversation on the porch or on the phone with every resident, together we can. The most effective way to change our world is to have conversations with other community members, with neighbors, and with friends. And we are doing that at the Upper Valley Field Office and want to invite you to come out there. If you are new, we'll train you. If you have a special skill, we will find a good use for it and put it to use. We are located at the Circle K Irving Gas Station Plaza at the corner of Route 10 and Route 4 as you are headed up to Hanover from Lebanon, where that horrible bridge construction is. I look forward to seeing you there and winning this election in the Upper Valley. And now, I would like to introduce Representative Andy White. He has been fighting for working people on the New Hampshire House Labor Committee for the past 5 years. Feel the burn.
Thank you very much, Nate. In addition to being a state representative, I'm a worker. I'm a worker first. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. We have some very real problems facing our country, and we need a president who's going to do whatever it takes to advance workers, to advance families, and to move middle class back to the middle. It is right? It is sad that in New Hampshire, in the year 2015, our minimum wage is stuck at $7.25 an hour. This wage keeps families, workers, and their children irretractably in poverty. We can do better. Our infrastructure is crumbling, and our only plan is to kick it down the road. We can't continue this way. I think there's a better way. I believe that the most wealthy should pay their share. Thank you. No more corporate tax breaks, government giveaways to big business that are paid for on the backs of American workers. No more. I believe that our next president must put in place policies that support a strong, vibrant middle class, firming up Social Security, create a healthcare system that works for everyone, and paid sick leave so that workers don't have to choose between their jobs and their families. In New Hampshire, college graduates leave with not only a college degree, but the largest amount of student debt in the entire nation. College education must be within reach of every American, not just the wealthy. I grew up in Vermont. I know there's a candidate who can get us where we need to be. I saw Bernie Sanders, his courage, standing up for what he believes in, not just sound bites, but real action for American people. Bernie has always stood up for workers, women, families, and he's a man who gives me hope for the political institution. And I am very pleased to introduce to you tonight Felicia Teeter. Felicia.
Wow, you're a lot taller. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Felicia Teeter. I am a Dartmouth College senior, a teacher, a religion major, and a co-founder of Dartmouth Students and Staff for Bernie. Thanks. But I didn't start here. I am a Yakima, and I was raised in Harrow, Washington on the Yakima Reservation. I graduated from Mount Adams School District, which in 2011 had a childhood poverty rate of 90%, an on-time graduation rate of 39%, and a 50% Native American, 33% Latino, and 4% white student body. Most people in my hometown can't find New Hampshire on a map, and yet here I am, one of the lucky ones. And that's the problem. The success of Black and brown children should not be seen as luck, while the success of white children is seen as an expectation. Bernie Sanders is the only candidate routinely calling out the institutional racism and systematic oppression apparent to many people of color who are silenced by those claiming that we live in a post-racial America where saying, "I don't see race," somehow acknowledges our daily struggle. He proclaims Black Lives Matter at each speech so that it can finally become the expectation. He is the only candidate discussing the relationship between our racist history and the current education, income, and justice inequalities plaguing communities of color and keeping them impoverished and imprisoned. I am a pansexual, biracial woman of color fighting for my people's rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness at a time when Native Americans are killed by law enforcement at a rate higher than any other racial group. It's not a good thing. I am fighting because the survival of impoverished people of color and people of the LGBTQI community can no longer be based on luck. You should expect to see us here. We deserve to be here. I'm organizing for Bernie Sanders because I'm done attempting to politely change a corrupt system that was designed to be impenetrable by people like me. It's time we face our history and use it as a tool to shape the future. I'm organizing for Bernie Sanders because it's time for a political revolution.
Thank you, Lebanon. Thank you. Whoa, what a great turnout. And I think we got a few hundred people in the overflow room as well. Hello, overflow room. All right, let me thank Marina and Lauren and Nate and Representative Andy White and Felicia for their wonderful introductions, and thank you all for coming out on this Halloween afternoon. The media thinks I do not have a sense of humor, so I got to tell you a joke. Are you ready for a joke? Are you all ready for this very funny joke? My name is Larry David, and I'm impersonating Bernie Sanders. That's the joke. So there it is. I have a sense of humor. Okay. Let me pick up on some of the points that the folks who introduced me made. And let me start off by saying that just about 6 months ago today, I announced my candidacy to be President of the United States of America. And when I announced, I think it is fair to say that probably 80% of the people in America did not know who Bernie Sanders was. Half the people in America probably didn't know where the state of Vermont was. You know, but others didn't. When we started off, we were at 4 or 5% in the polls. We had no money. We had no political organization. I think it is fair to say that in the last 6 months, things have changed a little bit. Now, while we do not have a super PAC, and I'm very proud to be one of the very few candidates for president without a super PAC, and we don't have a super PAC because I don't support the agenda of the billionaire class or corporate America, and I don't want their money. But you know what? When we began this campaign, a lot of these experts said, well, how can you possibly win an election when you don't have a super PAC, you're not collecting all this money from the wealthiest people in this country? Well, funny thing happened in the last 6 months. We have raised individual contributions from 750,000 Americans. How's that? That is a higher number of individual contributions than any other candidate in American history. And you all know the way a super PAC works. The way a super PAC works is the candidate goes to some rich person's home, you sit around with 20 people and you leave with $5 million or $10 million, okay? Our average contribution is $30, and I'm proud of that. Now, when you take on the political establishment, it ends up you don't have the support of a lot of governors and mayors and senators and members of the House. That's true. But what you do have is the support of hundreds of thousands of volunteers who are out knocking on doors today and making phone calls. I'd rather have the people than the political establishment. Now, what this campaign is about really is not complicated. It's unusual in terms of what we're trying to do, but it is not complicated. What the political revolution means in English is that if millions of people, often young people, working people, people who today are not participating in the political process, that unless they get involved, unless we bring out people to vote, the bottom line is the rich will be continuing to be richer and everybody else will be poorer. The bottom line is we will continue to ignore climate change and racism and sexism and homophobia. What the political revolution is about, simply stated, it is time for people of this country to stand up and say loudly and clearly, enough is enough. Our government belongs to all of us, not just the top 1%. And what this campaign is about, importantly, is the understanding that the rich get richer and right-wing Republicans win elections when they are capable of dividing us up. And they divide us up of white against black, native-born against immigrant, straight against gay, men against women. And our job is to overcome those divisions, is to bring our people together, to fight for an agenda that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign donors. And when we stand together and we don't allow them to divide us up, it is no contest. Because the issues that we are concerned about, and you already heard some of those issues, these are not fringe issues. I don't want any of you to think that you're really brave and courageous. The ideas that we are talking about are the ideas that are supported by the vast majority of the American people. And one of the fun things about running for president is you can put issues on the table that others prefer to sweep under the rug. So let's put some of those issues right on the table, and that is the fact that today we are living in a country which has more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth, and that it is worse today in the United States than at any time since 1928. You are living in a country where the top 0.1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. You are living in a country where for the last 30 years there has been a massive redistribution of wealth. Problem is that redistribution has gone in the wrong direction. Trillions of dollars have flowed out of the hands of working families into the pockets of the top 0.1%. You are living in a country where one family, I'm not talking about some third world country, in the United States of America, the richest country in the history of the world, one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. You are living in a country in which the last 2 years, the 15 wealthiest people in this country, 15 people, have seen their wealth increase by $170 billion, more wealth than is owned by the bottom 130 million Americans. In other words, you are living in a rigged economy. In my state, across the river, and here in New Hampshire, it is not uncommon. It is not uncommon to see people working 2 jobs and 3 jobs just to cobble together some income and some health care in order to maintain their families. This is the United States of America. This is the year 2015. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We need an economy that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. And when we talk about the economy, it's not only a distribution of wealth. It's that our people, many people don't know this, that here in the United States, our people work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. You all know that? You know, 100 years ago, workers marched and held demonstrations. You know what they said? What did they say 100 years ago? They wanted a what? 40-hour work week. Well, 100 years have come and gone. Technology has exploded. Workers are more productive than ever before. We still would like a 40-hour work week. And yet, amazingly enough, despite how hard our people are working, you got husbands working 50 or 60 hours a week, wives working 50 or 60 hours a week, 58% of all new income generated today is going to the top 1%. That is not acceptable. And when we talk about our economy, it is not only the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality we are experiencing, it is the fact that real unemployment is much, much too high. Now, every month, government comes out with a number of statistics. There it is. Government is statistic. And what they tell us is they give us the unemployment rate. What the front pages of the newspapers record is the official unemployment rate, which is about 5%. Those numbers do not include people who have given up looking for work or people who are working part-time. Add that together, real unemployment is 10% in America. And now let me tell you something that we never discuss: youth unemployment in America. If you are a white kid between 17 and 20 and you graduated high school, real unemployment for you is 33%. If you are Latino, it is 36%. If you are African American, it is 51%. We have 5.5 million young people in this country who are not in school, who are not working, who are hanging out on street corners in Burlington, Vermont, and all over this country. And if anybody here thinks there is not a direct correlation between high youth unemployment and the fact that we have more people in jail than any other country, you would be mistaken. Now, here's something we got to worry about, and here's something that we have got to do something about. In America today, we have 2.2 million people in jail, more than China, more than any other country on earth. So here is a very radical idea. How about, as a nation, us investing in jobs and education rather than jails and incarceration? How about making sure that our young people get the help they need to stay in school or get the jobs that they need, rather than spending $60,000 a person locking them up? And when we talk about the economy, it's not only income and wealth inequality, it's not only unemployment. It is the fact that millions and millions of Americans are working for wages that are just too damn low. I was in Iowa a few months ago, and I talked to a guy whose job it was to collect food that was not sold at a farmer's market and take it to an emergency food shelf. And I asked him, I said, tell me, what percentage of the people around here who go to the emergency food shelf are employed? And he said 90% of the people who go to the emergency food shelf are employed. What that means is people are working, they're working hard, but they're just not making the income they need to feed their family. That has got to change. It is not a radical idea to say that if you work 40 hours a week in America, you should not be living in poverty. The minimum wage today, federal minimum wage, is $7.25 an hour. That is a starvation wage. We've got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour over the next few years. And when we talk about equitable wages, guys, you got to stand with the women and fight for pay equity for women. There is no rational economic reason as to why women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. The only reason for that is plain old-fashioned sexism, and that has got to end. Here in New Hampshire, you got a lot of politicians tropping through your state, right? And you got a lot of Republicans who come through the state and they want to lecture us all on family values. Say they just love families, especially very wealthy families. If you're a poor family, they don't love you quite so much. But when they talk about family values, you know what they mean, and I know what they mean. And what they mean, quite unbelievably in the year 2015, what they mean by family values is that no woman in America should be able to control her own body. I disagree. These are the decisions that are going to be made by women, not the government. For years and decades and longer than that, we all know that the gay community has been horrendously discriminated against. And in recent years, we have made some real good progress that we should be proud of. But when Republicans talk about family values, what they are saying is that our gay brothers and sisters should not be able to get married. I disagree. Now, I've got 4 kids. My son is here somewhere. I have 7 grandchildren, and my wife, Jane, and I have been married for 27 years. And we take family and the support of family and family values very seriously. But when we talk about family values, our views are quite different than Republican family values. And when I talk about family values, what I talk about is ending the international embarrassment of the United States of America being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. Today, in New Hampshire and in Vermont and all over this country, women are giving birth. And for those of you who are parents, you know what an extraordinary day that is. And it's a pretty big day for the baby as well. But here's the story, which is not so funny. And that is, if that mom and her family have sufficient income, she will do what every family wants. She will be able to nurture that baby, love that baby, get to know that baby for months and months in what is the most important time of a human being's life. That's family values, mom and dad getting to know their baby. When a mother, a working class mother or a low income mom, is forced to separate from her baby after a week or 2 because she does not have sufficient income to stay home, that is not a family value. That is the opposite of a family value. And that is why I will fight as president to make sure that every family in this country has at least 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave. And when we talk about the economy, it is important for us to know that unemployment remains much too high. We're in a lot better shape than we were 7 years ago when Bush left us. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month, but unemployment remains much too high today. And that is why I strongly support a massive federal jobs program to put our people back to work. In my view, we should not be firing teachers and child care workers. We should be hiring teachers and more child care employees. When our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, our levees, our dams, our rail, our airports are in need of massive repair, American Society of Civil Engineers tells us we need to invest over $3 trillion to bring our infrastructure up to par. In my view, we invest in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. $1 trillion investment in 5 years creates 13 million good-paying jobs. That is what we should be doing. And when we talk about jobs, it is not only creating millions of decent jobs, it is preventing the loss of millions of jobs as a result of disastrous trade policies. NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China have resulted in the shutdown of tens of thousands of factories in America, workers thrown out on the street, jobs going abroad, and pushing us toward a race to the bottom. Our trade policy should be about creating good-paying jobs in America, not just countries all over the world. And when we talk about the economy, we got to talk about the elephant in the room that we don't talk about anywhere near enough, and that is the greed and the illegal behavior and the recklessness of Wall Street. You're looking at somebody who is, when he was in the House, said, you know what, it doesn't sound to me like a great idea to allow investor banks to merge with commercial banks, to merge with huge insurance companies. Doesn't sound like a great idea to me. And I took on Alan Greenspan and Bill Clinton, the Republican parties, trying to fight that deregulation. Well, we lost that. And 15 years later, as a result of the greed and illegal behavior on Wall Street, our economy crashed. Today, amazingly enough, 3 out of the 4 largest banks in America are bigger now than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. 6 largest banks in America have assets equivalent to 60% of the GDP of the United States of America. In my view, 2 points. Number one, I find it interesting that kids who get caught with marijuana develop a police record, while CEOs whose illegal behavior destroyed our economy don't have a police record. That's got to change. And maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think that when a bank is too big to fail, it's too big to exist. We've got to break them up. In our country today, as I mentioned, we have an economy that is rigged. Middle class is disappearing. 47 million Americans living in poverty, tens of millions of our people working longer hours for lower wages, almost all of the new income and wealth created going to the top 1%. That's a rigged economy. But on top of a rigged economy, what the political revolution that we are engaged in is is not only creating an economy that works for working people, it is creating a political system which is democratic and which is not moving us toward oligarchy. As all of you know, 5 or 6 years ago, by a 5-4 decision, the United States Supreme Court ruled on the Citizens United case and made one of the very worst decisions in the history of our country. And what the Supreme Court said to the wealthiest people in this country, what they said is, okay, guys, you already own much of the economy. Now we're going to give you the opportunity to purchase the United States government and state governments all over this country. That you can spend as much money as you want on elections and on campaigns. And what has happened as a result of that is that the billionaire class and large and wealthy campaign donors are now contributing unbelievable sums of money into the political process. Just an article, I think, in the New York Times today, in which Paul Singer is a well-known Wall Street billionaire, has decided that he's not going to be supporting Jeb Bush, and he's going to be supporting another candidate, and everybody, it's a big deal because a billionaire has made a decision, in this case to support Marco Rubio, and all these guys are all trying to get the support of billionaires. Well, it might be a good idea if they tried to get the support of working families rather than just billionaires. According to a recent report, about half of the campaign contributions so far have come from a few hundred families. Now, when you have a situation where in almost every case, super PACs, that's money coming from millionaires and billionaires, are raising more money than the candidate himself or herself are raising. When you have a situation where one family, the Koch brothers, second wealthiest family in America, an extreme right-wing family, will be spending $900 million on this campaign, which is more money than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party will be spending. You tell me what kind of system you're living in. Surely does not look like democracy to me. It looks like oligarchy, and we have got to stop that. You know, we in New England have some very old traditions called town meetings. And people come together exactly like this in a meeting like this, and they argue about local budgets and, you know, and then they vote. Everybody has one vote. One person, one vote. Our understanding of democracy is not seeing billionaires buying elections, but everybody having an equal opportunity to make his or her voice heard. My promise to you tonight is that no nominee of mine to the U.S. Supreme Court will get that position unless he or she is crystal clear in saying that one of their first orders of business will be to vote to overturn the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. But overturning Supreme Court and going back to where we were, overturning Citizens United and going back to where we were is not good enough. We've got to do better than that. There is no reason why the United States should not have one of the highest voter turnouts in the world rather than one of the lowest. Our friends north of us in Canada had an election a few weeks ago, and as I understand it, about 68% of the people in their country came out to vote. In Europe, in some countries, it's often higher than that. We had an election last November in which 34% 4% of the American people voted, in which 80% of young people did not participate. What the political revolution is about, and where we have got to work aggressively together, is to make certain that as many people in this country vote as possible. If we would have nothing more than 68% of our people voting, we could transform American society. Our jobs as people who believe in democracy is to make it as easy as possible for people to vote, not as hard as possible. And we are going to take on those Republican governors and legislatures who are doing everything they can to suppress the vote. That is a disgrace. You know, I have run in many elections. I've lost some, I've won most. But it has never occurred to me, not for 1 second, to figure out a strategy to make it harder for people who might vote against me to participate in the political process. Our job is to tell those governors and those legislators that if they are afraid of fair elections, of free elections, of elections in which people can participate without impediments, if they're afraid of those elections, they should get another job because they should not be a governor. Simply stated, in America, if you're 18 years of age or older, you are registered to vote. End discussion. Everybody knows that we are living in a very competitive global economy. And if we are going to succeed now and into the future, we need to have the best educated workforce in the world. It is beyond my comprehension how it happens that today hundreds of thousands of bright and qualified young people who desperately want a higher education are unable to go to college for one reason alone, and that is that their families lack the funds. That is grossly unfair to those young people who have studied hard, and it is totally absurd if we are worried about the future of our economy. We need the best minds possible. We need to have the best educational system. We need the best scientists and engineers and teachers. So to tell those young people, sorry, you don't have the money, you can't go to college, is totally absurd. And that is why I have introduced legislation and will fight as president to make every public college and university in America tuition free. Now, that is obviously important for people who are going to college, saving them a lot of money and so forth. But I want to tell you how it is really revolutionary. Today in America, I grew up in a family where my mom and my dad never went to college. My father came to this country having dropped out of high school. My mom graduated high school. They never went to college. And all over this country, you have low-income and working-class families where parents never went to college. And the children of those families very often have never met or talked to people who have gone to college. And the idea of going to college is as abstract for them as is going to the moon. So when you're in the 4th grade and the 6th grade, you already understand instinctually, if not intellectually, I'm not going to college. I don't know anybody who's gone to college. What is all this college discussion about? It ain't me. Maybe somebody else on the other side of town, or it's not me. You know, my brother never went to college. My dad never went to college. My friends' families never went to college. I ain't going to college. Why the hell do I have to study? Why do I have to do my homework? Why do I have to do well in school? I'm not going anyplace. And then, you know, on their second or third year in high school, they're dropping out. They're getting into trouble. Maybe they end up in jail. What I want to see in this country is every child in the 4th grade, in the 6th grade, in the 8th grade know, and every teacher know, that if those kids take school seriously, if they study hard, if they do well, they will be able to get a college education regardless of the income of their families. And that is a revolutionary step forward in education. And the other issue when we talk about higher education is student debt. How many people in this room are dealing with student debt? Look around you. A lot of people. And we have millions and millions of people in this country. I just did a meeting. We were in Derry last night, and I asked people how much they're paying on their interest rates. One woman was paying, I think, 14%. Somebody else was paying 11%, 8%, 6%. Now, that's all pretty crazy when you can go out and refinance your home for what, 2, 3, 4%? So why is somebody stuck with a 12 or 11 or 14% interest rate on student debt when you can refinance your home for 2, 3, 4%? And that is why my legislation and what we have got to see in America is allowing people with student debt to refinance at the lowest interest rates they can find. Well, people say to me, my critics, I got articles in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, oh, Bernie is spending all this money, this is terrible. Well, actually, this is an expensive proposition. To make public colleges and universities tuition free, to lower student debt's about $70 billion a year, a lot of money. And you know we're going to pay for this? We're going to pay for it through a tax on Wall Street speculation. Seven years ago, Wall Street went begging to Congress to ask for a bailout. Now it is Wall Street's turn to bail out the middle class of this country. When we talk about our responsibilities as parents, as adults, as custodians of the earth, it seems to me that we have a moral responsibility to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for our children and our grandchildren. And the truth is that maybe with the exception of Fox Television, the debate about climate change is over. I sit on the Energy Committee and the Environmental Committee. I have heard from scientists throughout our country and throughout the world. And what they tell us almost unanimously is that climate change is real, climate change is caused by human activity, climate change is already causing devastating problems in America and around the world. And what they also tell us is that we have a short, limited window of opportunity to aggressively move to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable technologies. And what they tell us is if we do not do that, what we will see is more and more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances. Some of you may have heard this Hurricane Patricia had winds of 200 miles an hour, harsher than any hurricane on record. We're going to see more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels. And what the CIA tells us is that peoples around the world who do not have water to drink or land to grow their crops, they're going to be more international conflict as they fight over limited natural resources. That is the future unless we act boldly now. In my view, this country, with all of our technology, with all of the great minds that we have, we can and should lead the world in working with China and Russia and India, countries all over the world, in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel. And let me tell you something in which you see the connections between how things work in this country today. Now, you're looking at a guy who is probably the most progressive member of the United States Senate, okay? And what that means is that I disagree with the Republicans on almost every issue, okay? That's what it means, and most Democrats. But this issue of climate change is something different, and I'll tell you what makes it different. In this issue, we're not talking about how much money we're going to spend on education or healthcare. What we are talking about is whether or not we believe in science. It is hard. Just think about it for a moment. How do you develop sensible public policy? On what foundation do you make decisions if you reject science? Now, my Republican colleagues, when they hear from oncologists, when they hear from cancer researchers, when they hear from people who study Alzheimer's disease or diabetes, they don't go into a diatribe attacking these researchers and these doctors. They listen respectfully. They believe what the scientists have to say. But somehow or another, when it comes to the scientists who are talking about climate change, the Republicans are up in arms, attacking them. Why is that? And the answer is very simple, and it ties into the issue of campaign finance. If today a leading Republican were to stand up and say, you know, I've talked to scientists, I've read the literature, we've got a serious problem, we've got to break our dependence on fossil fuel, move to energy efficiency, move to sustainable energy. On the day that that Republican candidate made that statement, his funding from the Koch brothers and from big energy, the oil and the gas companies, would stop, and he would be challenged by a well-funded primary opponent. In other words, what the big fossil fuel money has done is intimidate Republicans from accepting what science has to say. And my message to the Republicans, many of whom are smart people, is to have the courage to think about the future for your kids and your grandchildren and tell the fossil fuel contributors to go to hell. You're going to do the right thing. Now, one of my goals in this campaign is to try to create a process by which people think big, not small. Too often we get caught up in this very conservative, small think approach to life. So the debate is, do we cut education by 2%, do we cut it by 4%? And all the liberals stand up, we're only going to cut it by 2%. You know? Or do you throw X number of people off of health care, or do you throw Y number of people off of health care? And that's the debate that we have. See that every day in Congress. I want us to think big. And I want us, among many other areas, to ask a simple question. Yes, the Affordable Care Act, which I supported, has done us a lot of good. It's gotten rid of the obscenity of pre-existing conditions. It has provided health insurance for some 15 million people who do not who did not previously have it. That is a good thing. But, and here is the but, the United States today remains the only major country on earth, the only one, that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right, and that has got to change. This is a great country. Brilliant people all over this country. Try to tell me why Canada can have a single-payer system. They've had it under a formerly conservative prime minister who fortunately is no longer the prime minister, but all right. Even under conservatives in the United Kingdom, they have a more or less socialized healthcare system. Germany has a system. France has a different system. Scandinavia has a different system. They all have different systems. But the commonality of all of those systems is, number one, health care for people in those countries is a right, not a privilege. Point number two is these systems are not designed to allow private insurance companies and drug companies to make huge profits. And point number three is, without exception, all of those systems are far more cost-effective, costing far less per capita than our dysfunctional system. Now, I'm not going to promise you it happens tomorrow, but it will happen. And that is that the United States of America will pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. Now, when I talk about the political revolution, when I talk about thinking big and not small, I'm not talking about pie in the sky utopian vision. I don't know the secret of human happiness. All of us are going to experience tragedy in our lives. Bad things happen. But this is what I do know. I know that when people have economic security, when workers are earning a decent wage, when children are not living in poverty, when kids are going to decent schools, when all of our people can afford to go to college, when everybody has health care, when you have that type of economic security, your life is better. So what I am fighting for, and what the political revolution is about, is to say that in this great country, every man, woman, and child should have health care as a right, not a privilege. What I am saying is in the United States, 1 out of 5 patients should not be in a situation where they cannot afford the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe, because our people are forced to pay the highest prices in the world. What I am saying is that when mom and dad go to work, they should feel confident that when they leave their kids in a pre-K program or in childcare, their kids are going to get the best quality childcare possible at an affordable cost. What I am saying, and it is not utopian, it exists elsewhere, that when you are old and you can't work and you get sick and you're frail, you should not have to live on $11,000 or $12,000 a year. You should be able to retire and live out your life with security and dignity, which is why no, Republicans, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security benefits. It is not utopian. It is not pie in the sky to say that large multinational corporations should not be able to get away with stashing their money in the Cayman Islands and other tax havens, and in a given year not pay a nickel in federal income tax. If you're rich and if you're a profitable corporation, you are going to start paying your fair share of taxes. It is not utopian to say that when men and women put their lives on the line to defend this country, that they are going to get the health care and the other benefits that they deserve. Not utopian, decency. It is not utopian or pie in the sky to say that if you are an African American, you're not going to get dragged out of a car because you didn't signal a right turn, get thrown to the ground, and die 3 days later in a jail. You're not. It is not utopian to say that we are going to reform a very broken criminal justice system and we're going to end institutional racism in this country. Not utopian. Our job is to create an America that works for all of us, not just the people who own the economy or who control our political system. We can live in a nation where every person, no matter their race, their religion, their disability, or their sexual orientation, realizes the full promise of equality that is our birthright as proud Americans. This is the nation that we can create, and on behalf of our children and grandchildren, is the nation we must create. Please join the political revolution. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I think what we'll do now is, Phil, what do we got? A couple of people here? Kurt, what do we got? Phil, you got one? Anyone else have one? All right, who's that? Who's on the other side? Where is she? All right, well, we got a mic someplace on that side. We got a mic here, and I believe we have a microphone in the overflow room. Is that correct? All right, so we'll start with you, Phil. We'll go to this side. We'll go to the overflow room. We'll go a couple of rounds, and we'll take some questions.
Test, test. Yes, I have a question regarding Social Security, and that is, instead of increasing the age before you can retire, instead of no increases in 2016 for Social Security, instead of taxing half of benefits if you're working, why can't we increase the cap that once a person makes $118,500, they no longer contribute to Social Security?
What is your name?
Terry.
Everybody hear Terry's question? Very important question. Most Republicans, not all, but the vast majority, want to cut Social Security. Okay? They want to do it in one of several ways. Maybe they want to raise the retirement age, or maybe they want to go forward what is called a chain CPI, which it changes the formula by which we determine inflation and cost of living adjustment. Now, what's very crazy is this year, as Terry just said, do you know what the cost of living adjustment is that was just announced by the government? It is 0. But that's too high. True. And Republicans want to make it lower. In fact, in recent years, there have been a number of occasions where the cost of living adjustment was 0. So what do? Terry is exactly right, and we've got legislation in to do just that. This is what you do. Instead of cutting Social Security, when you got millions of people in this country, elderly and disabled people, trying to get by on $12,000, $13,000 a year or less, what you do is lift the cap. Okay, what Terry is, here's where you are right now. Somebody makes $5 million a year, somebody makes $118,000 a year. They both contribute the same amount into Social Security. Once you're above that 118, you don't contribute anymore. What our legislation does, Terry, is it says that at $250,000 or above, we've lifted the cap on taxable income, and all of that income is going to be taxed at the same 6.2 rate that somebody makes $40,000 a year. You do that, this is what happens. Number one, you extend the life of Social Security until the year 2065. Number two, you expand benefits. And I'm going to fight to make that happen.
Bernie, I agree with absolutely everything that you've said here today. Always have, probably always will. But
there's always a but. That always makes me nervous.
the one thing that I think that you're weak on, and I hope you can clear this up so that you can go around the country, is gun control. What are you going to do about the scourge of gun violence in this country? And here, I have an idea for you. I will give it to you for free.
For free, all right.
We cannot go around collecting people's guns, but we can stop making ammunition. And the ammunition will be gone, and all it is something you can, dig a hole in the ground with.
No. So your suggestion is the people have guns but no ammunition. I don't think that's going to work, to be honest with you. Let me say thank you for asking the question. And I live in a state. How many folks from Vermont? Have we got some guys from Vermont? All right. All right. Well, Vermont and New Hampshire share, a common view, and that is both states have very little gun control. That's just the fact. And under Democratic administrations, Republican administrations, that's the way it's been. So let me tell you a little bit about gun control, because I think I've been unfairly attacked on this. Vermonters will know, or may remember, back in 1988, there was a three-way race for the United States Congress. We have one seat in Congress, New Hampshire has two. In that race, I was running as an independent. There was a Republican and Democrat, and what the gun people said is you can vote for either the Democrat or the Republican. Don't vote for Bernie Sanders. Why? Because Bernie Sanders supports a ban on certain types of assault weapons that are designed to kill people, not for hunting. Okay? Now, I lost that election by 3 percentage points, close election. Did I lose that election because of my stand on banning assault weapons in a state that has virtually no gun control, where over half the population are gun owners? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But that was my view in 1988 because I believed that was right. That was my view in 1990 when I won. That is my view today, and that is how I voted. I believe that we need a strong and better instant background check to make sure that criminals and people who have mental illnesses who should not have guns do not have guns. I voted for instant background checks, and I'm prepared to vote to make them stronger. I voted to end the absurd gun show loophole, which allows people to avoid instant background checks. I have voted for doing away with that loophole, and I'll vote again to do away with that. I believe we have got to end this straw man situation in which what that means is that people legally buy guns and then they sell them to people who are criminals. We got to end that as well. And I'll tell you what else we have got to do. Sadly, in America today, there are many thousands of people who are walking our streets, and I get these calls in my office, and other senators and congressmen do as well, who have severe mental problems. We get calls from family members who say, I worry about what my brother may do to himself or somebody else, but we can't find anybody who can treat him because we don't have a whole lot of money. Which tells me that we have a mental health crisis in America, and that when people are on the edge of suicide or worse, maybe we should make sure they get access, regardless of their income, regardless of whether they have insurance or not, get access to the health care treatments, mental health care treatments they need. Now, I say all of this because this is what I believe. No, I don't believe that you should do away with ammunition. I don't believe you should ban all guns or all that stuff. I believe there is a common sense consensus in this country, including a strong majority of gun owners, who understand that guns should not fall into the hands of people who may do something terrible with it. I believe the vast majority of the American people want to do away with this gun show loophole. I believe that many Americans want to ban weapons which are not used for hunting, are just used to kill people. And I believe that most Americans understand we have a mental health crisis, and we've got to deal with this straw man issue. And what I am pledging to you to do, not what you want necessarily here to ban ammunition, I'm not going to do that, but what I will do is bring together the 60, 70% of the American people who do believe in common sense gun control legislation, which will get guns out of the hands of people who should not have them, and hopefully lead to a reduction in these horrific massacres that we have seen in recent months and years. What, outside? Okay, Paul, are you in the overflow room?
Senator, can you hear me in here?
Doesn't he sound like God? Just, I don't believe he has that voice.
We are 300 strong in the overflow.
All right.
And I have a question from Josh from Claremont.
Hello, Senator Sanders. First of all, I'm a transgender American. I want to thank you because you're either the only candidate or at least the first candidate who even said the word transgender on this campaign trail, so thank you for that. And my question is, you know, I wake up every day, I see a news story of a transgender American getting murdered, or, you know, all these things, and your bathroom bills, you know, I can't go to the bathroom in public without, you know, someone freaking out. And I want to know what you'll do to make it safer for me and everyone who's transgender in this country.
Thank you very much for your very good question. Look, I was just at a meeting the other day in Virginia at George Mason University. And a young woman stood up who was Muslim with real fear in her voice and saying, I am worried about Islamophobia. I am worried that there is a climate of hatred that is being propagated throughout this country. And this young man just mentioned the issue of transgender hatred and prejudice and hostility. I think the simple answer is that we have got to fight to create a nation free of discrimination for all people, whether they are transgender, whether they are Muslim, whether they are gay, whether they are black. We are seeing now a rising of hatred against Latinos. They are being attacked as being rapists and criminals. All of that stuff is not what America is supposed to be about. So what I say to my friend who is transgender, that we're going to fight for America, an America where all people, regardless of who you are, have equal rights, and we're going to end bigotry in this country. Phil?
Hi, Senator Sanders. My name is Spencer, and I was just wondering if you have any... What's up? I was just wondering if you have any concrete policy proposals to confront the disturbingly high rates of sexual assault on college campuses and in the military.
Sexual assault in the military is of epidemic proportions. It is an outrage, and I am working with a number of senators in legislation to take it out of the normal chain of authority, which has not acted as effectively as it might. When you have women or gay people entering the military who are prepared to put their lives on the line, they should not be subjected to sexual harassment or worse. So we're going to work very hard on that. In schools, we know that a significant number of women are sexually assaulted during their lives on campus. And I think clearly one of the immediate remedies is to tell colleges is if there is a sexual assault or a rape, this is not a college or university issue, this is a police issue. But thank you for identifying two very serious issues. Yep, I think we have a, do we have a question over there? Yep.
Hi, my name is Lily. I'm also a student, and my question is about, in order to redistribute Wall Street money to, everybody else, which I think is a great idea, being at Dartmouth and seeing the excesses of the finance world and the way that people find themselves working in it. Basically, I'm just wondering, you mentioned the tax. I just wanted some more details about how it would work. And do you see passing new legislation in order to regulate going forward to undo perhaps what happened in the 70s? Or in addition to that, how would you break up the banks the way you talked about?
Good question. Right now, around the world, the idea of a tax on speculation is not an unusual idea. It already exists in many countries around the world. It is a progressive way to raise money, and it does two things. Number one, it raises a very substantial sum of money in a progressive way. And the second impact that it has is it dampens speculation, which is a good thing as well. In my view, in dealing with Wall Street, a tax on Wall Street speculation is number one. Number two, we have got to bring back Glass-Steagall legislation. Which means that we are going to not allow investor banks and commercial banks and insurance companies to merge. And number three, most significantly, we are going to break up the largest financial institutions in this country. The future of America, financially, in terms of our financial system, should not be with a handful of very greedy financial institutions. It should be with credit unions and community banks who are parts of communities who are prepared to lend money to small businesses and people who want to buy homes. That's the future, I think, of where we should be going.
My name is Laura. I recently moved to Vermont.
Hold that mic a little bit closer, please, to your mouth.
I recently moved from Vermont to Texas, and so this has been something that I have observed personally. but the New York Times just came out with a graph showing the huge disparity in the rate of insurance coverage between states that expanded Medicaid and those that did not. What can be done before single payer comes about to try to address that level of inequality?
Great question. But the question is there many Republican states, unbelievable. I was on the committee that helped write the Affordable Care Act. We are providing 100% coverage to those states who expand Medicaid, and yet you have many Republican governors and legislatures who are allowing their right-wing ideology to overcome the ability to prevent millions of people from getting health insurance, people who desperately need it. You know, I think you've asked a good question, and I think clearly right now the immediate goal is state by state. We're making some progress to demand that those governors do the right thing. And I think legislatively we got to rethink this thing. If we're going to provide health insurance, if our goal is to provide health insurance to people who need it, I do not want to see Republican governors and legislatures reject what we have done. So there are a number of approaches, but it is an issue of huge consequence. People are dying today. People are getting much sicker than they should be because they have right-wing governors who choose not to take 100% federal funding for the expansion of Medicaid. It's a good question. There are a number of ways that we can address it. Okay, Paul, are you outside?
Can you hear me? I got a good one from Jason Purdy.
Hi, my question regards who will pay for the your family leave proposal. Now, I have a business with 35 employees, and we pay one of the highest wages in.
Can you talk into the mic a little bit?
Business. What? Yeah, and to have somebody leave is an extremely expensive and burdensome time just to have them leave and try to replace them. So how would you add the expense of the Family Leave Act onto the small business as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question clearly.
It's about the cost of the family leave proposal.
Yeah, no, that's not going to be
done. Who will pay for that? Will that be a burden, an additional burden on small businesses?
It will be both on the employee and the employer in terms of a very small increase in the payroll tax. And I do believe that that is a fair way to fund something that is desperately needed in this country, to fund something in which the United States of America is virtually the only country in the world not providing. So I am a strong believer. To answer your question, it is a small increase on both the employer and the employee.
Based on a federal tax.
That's based on the federal payroll tax. That's correct.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My name is Chris, and I have a question. A recent study found that corporations externalize about $2.3 trillion on the U.S. people, government, and environment. And I was wondering, besides taxation, how you aim to offset that?
Is your point that, for example, fossil fuel companies create a lot of illness?
Exactly. So that by lack of environmental regulations and dumping.
Good.
And
well, I'll tell you, I was several years ago, Senator Barbara Boxer of California and I introduced the first legislation ever introduced in the U.S. Senate to impose a tax on carbon. All right, and if we are serious about breaking our dependency on fossil fuel and in fact cleaning up our environment, that is the way to go. So a tax on carbon helps us transit away from pollutants, not just carbon, but other pollutants, and create a cleaner environment. Your point is, and we see it every day, corporations produce things which we end up having to pay for through illness or through other ways. It is a very good point, and I will tell you that in terms of fossil fuel, we are going to fight for a tax on carbon, and I think I'm the only candidate for president who believes in that. All right, let's go where's Phil? Where are you, Phil? Okay.
Hi, my name is Brennan, and I go to the University of Vermont. And I was wondering that a lot of people say that that you might not be able to be capable of being able to implement a lot of what you believe because of going through Congress. Do you plan to be able to execute some of your actions and ideas through like bureaucratic means?
Say bureaucratic means?
Yeah,
No.
like around Congress and different agencies.
No, that would be, you have the president, as President Obama has recently recognized, you have a lot of authority through executive order, and obviously you use that, but legislation is legislation, executive orders are executive orders. To bring about real change in this country, we need to pass legislation. Congress has to do it. But I will tell you how we do it. And this gets into what I mean by the political revolution. Virtually everything that I have said this evening has the support of the American people. And when the American people stand up and say, yes, we are going to raise the minimum wage, we demand that Congress do it. Yes, we're going to pay equity for women workers. Yes, we are going to pass paid family and medical leave. Yes, we are going to move away from fossil fuel. When people are organized and they stand up, we can make it happen. The reason that Republicans get away with an agenda that calls for tax breaks to billionaires and cuts in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education is people are not involved in the political process. Nobody agrees with that stuff, not 10% of the American people. But they get away with it because their big money friends want it, and they assume the vast majority of the people are not going to vote or are aware of what's going on. So let me end on that note in telling you exactly what the political revolution is about. Everything that I talked about tonight can be passed when we stand together and when we demand that Congress work for us, not just campaign donors. Thank you all very much.